I want to speak to a question that's been coming up quite a number of times. And I think there is no amount of emphasis that we can put on this thing in order for us to clear this once and for all, but we're going to keep answering this question. You know, there are people who are continuously asking, why would you, in your right mind, use credit to buy property whilst you actually have an opportunity to buy it cash? Now, I'm going to put categories on this thing, and I'm going to put contexts on them, right? Firstly, I want to emphasize the fact that I am referring to employees most of the time that are earning a salary, right? And in their earning a salary, they want to invest in things that first can actually generate income, whether it's now or later, or by virtue of money flowing back in now, or in terms of a capital appreciation. And remember, for employees, one of the ways in which they get to make income or make money is a reduction of taxes that they are responsible for or that they have to pay. And I keep reiterating this issue because it is the point of departure for this discussion. If you want to make money, you are not employed, you want to run a business so as to fund your lifestyle. Listen, if you have cash to actually buy property, to rent it out, do that. Because you need cash flow now. You are doing it for cash flow, right? And that means in the midst of that, you must know from the first rent that you're going to be making, if you are actually buying that in your personal capacity, you must know that you're going to be accounting for taxes based on the individual tax brackets. But if you decide to also to put it in a company, that's again, when we talk about structuring, don't just structure, know why you should structure. I would advise anyone who is running purely a property investment business, in order for them to fund their lifestyle, to put their properties in a company or in a trust. Put them in something that's going to outlast you in terms of living, because of you want continuity there even when you are not around. The same for the employee, however, the objectives are different. And this is where the objective is different for the employee on. Firstly, the employee is trying to leverage their salary, right? They've got a salary slip, which then gives them favor with the bank to get the lowest or the cheapest kind of debt that anyone can get. A business person does not have the same advantage, right? So the employee has a salary which gives them leverage in order for them to go to the bank, get the cheapest form of debt, so that they can buy an asset that appreciates in value, that can also give them back money from the moment that that asset is registered in their name. Now, I've heard comments before where people say, yeah, you must stop saying that a property that's bought by the bank is your property. By the way, I've got to dispel that misconception, because of we have provided definition according to the accounting standards that they call it, there's a term now. I must just remember this term. Substance over form. Yes, substance over form is key when it comes to definitions of things like this. The bank might actually be a part owner of the property. However, the person who gets the benefit from the use of the property is me, because I am paying the bank for the debt that they've given me. Therefore, that property is mine. I get to determine what happens in that property. I get to expand it without me having to consult the bank. However, I must just ensure that there is a way in which I can reimburse the bank for the money that they've given me. Now, I don't want us to actually delve too long on those, because those can get technical, right? So we've spoken about the fact that you're leveraging your salary, you're getting the cheapest kind of debt, so that you can actually get this appreciating asset in a manner that can allow you to reduce your taxes if you do this thing, because your objective is to get capital appreciation, right? Because when you are an employee, you already have cash flow. But now the problem that you are having is that from the cash flow that you have, it's being taxed on a high level. And you are now trying to reduce that. Now, that's why you invest in something that might require you for the first few years. Sometimes it's just 3 years. For people who actually are buying properties from developers that they might actually have to chip in here and there because the rental that they are making might not be making up the bond, or it might make up the bond, but it doesn't make up for the rates and taxes depending on where you've actually bought. Now, that money that you are chipping in there is actually the investment then that you are getting that enables you to claim from your tax submissions so that the taxes that you have paid from your salary can be reduced by that money, right? That's the first incentive, that you get to reduce your taxes. Secondly, you also get to partake of the capital growth of the asset that you did not buy with your money, but you use the bank's money, and you are getting somebody else to partly pay for the repayment of the bond to the bank. So we actually are counting a number of benefits that we actually are putting in now. The challenge that also gets to be experienced by some people is that we want to compare the benefits that an employee who has used the bank's money with those of a business person who has used their money in order for them to actually acquire the asset, and then they are now regenerating, or they are generating income from that, and it looks like it's pure income to the business owner, which now on the other side it's just losses for the employee. The two cannot be compared because it's like comparing apples and bananas. The business person here firstly has made losses on few things. The loss of the access to the capital income, or the capital amount that they had, that they have now submitted to the bank against the asset, which is an illiquid asset. That means if I had R1,000,000, I've just put that R1,000,000 in the bank's hands, and I won't have access to it, so that I can have access to this brick and mortar that I won't be able to actually use, so that I can actually exchange for anything that might be short term. I have to wait for a period of time before I can actually get that money back by either selling that asset, or I will then be making the rental income that I will be getting from the tenants. However, of that rental income, remember that I've lost access to the R1,000,000 that I had liquidity from. Then number two, I have then now I'm getting rental income from the tenant. Now, from the first rent that the tenant, it's mostly if ever it's in the name of the company. If it's in the name of the company, the first rent of income that comes in from that tenant, the rental income, I'm going to have to make sure that 27% from a corporate income tax side is going to be taxed. So if I'm making 10,000 from that, 2,700 rand is going to be going to the government. I'm only going to be left with 7.3. But if ever I'm actually renting that property in my name as a business person, and I'm actually in the 45% bracket, then that means only 5,500 is mine. 4,500 is actually going to be the government. Now, depending on how many deductions I have access to. So I'm just trying to give us layer by layer in terms of what the differences are between the two. What I'm trying to then also emphasize is the fact that employees are not losing when they are chipping in on the rent, because the capital appreciation on the asset is due to them also the growth in the rental income, because the rental income does not stay the same. There is normally an annual increase on the rental. If ever I started this year at 10,000 rands, and I have a 10% annual increase on that particular rental, 20 years from now, we actually are going to be chatting, we're going to be talking about a huge amount of rental income, which is inevitable because of inflation is inevitable. That means that the price of houses is going to continue to grow. Also, that's why then the rental amount is also going to continue to grow. However, the liability continues to decrease, and I understand that these are normally looked at with this lens of it's risky in terms of the economy. Risks are everywhere. We are risky on this side, we have risks on this side, we have risks also on the business side of things, and those risks cannot be compared to the T and actually get to see that which one is actually better than the other, because it depends on what your situation looks like. I might have been passionate about this, however, I'm just trying to bring a point home to say these workshops then that we do, we actually get to break down all these pointers to the T so that we can actually deal with each specific scenario as it deserves. Otherwise, we cannot just have this overarching analysis that's going to actually knock off what is good for you and what is not good for you. You definitely are going to need to delve deeper and use your own scenario in order for you to analyze and get to the conclusion of whether your investment is good or it's not good. My name is Mandelake, and I hope to engage you more as we continue. Mandelake, yeah, thank you.